Two women. Same company. Same department. They started within 6 months of each other, earn within $3,000 of the same annual salary, and have lunch together twice a week. They'd been doing this for 11 years. One of them got a text last spring from her financial app. It said her investment portfolio had crossed $200,000. She screenshoted it, sent it to her husband, and went back to her salad. It wasn't a celebration moment. It was just a milestone on a path she'd been walking steadily for a decade without drama, without sacrifice that felt like suffering, and without ever earning an exceptional income. The other woman has saved money every single year for 11 years. She is diligent. She is disciplined. She checks her bank balance regularly. She has a savings account she contributes to every month without fail. She is doing what everyone told her to do. Save money. Be responsible. Don't spend more than you earn. She has $23,000. Same income. Same time. Same intention to build financial security. One has $200,000. One has $23,000. And if you asked the second woman what she did wrong, she would tell you honestly nothing. She saved. Every month. Just like she was supposed to. She's not wrong that she saved. She's wrong about what saving actually means. This isn't about how much you save. It's about what you do with money after you save it. The word saving has become so broadly used, so culturally praised, that it has lost its actual meaning. We call it saving when we put money in a checking account. We call it saving when we move money to a bank savings account earning 0.4% interest. We call it saving when we stop spending. And because the word sounds right, it feels like the right thing is happening. It isn't. Saving, in the way most people practice it, is not wealth building. It is wealth parking, and parked money, over time, doesn't grow into financial freedom. It slowly loses value while the cost of everything around it rises. The difference between $200,000 and $23,000 is not discipline. It is not income. It is understanding what saving is actually supposed to accomplish and using the right tools to accomplish it. I'm going to show you the specific saving mistakes that keep hardworking, disciplined people financially stuck for decades and exactly what to do differently. Not by saving more. By saving smarter. By understanding what money needs to do after it leaves your spending account, and building a system that works while you're having lunch, sleeping, or doing literally anything else. Let's start with the mistake that costs the most and gets talked about the least. Mistake 1. Treating a savings account like a wealth-building tool. A savings account is not designed to build wealth. It never was. A savings account is designed to keep your money safe and accessible. That is its entire purpose. The interest it pays is a courtesy, not a return. At a typical bank savings account rate of 0.4% to 0.5%, you are not growing your money. You are barely acknowledging its existence. Here is what that actually means in numbers. You have $20,000 in a traditional savings account at 0.4% annual interest. After 1 year, you have earned $80. After 5 years, assuming you added nothing, you have earned roughly $400 in interest. In that same 5 years, if inflation averaged 3% annually, the purchasing power of your $20,000 has dropped by approximately $2,800. You did not gain $400. You lost $2,400 in real terms while feeling financially responsible the entire time. But here's what most people miss: the savings account is not the problem. Having an emergency fund in a savings account is correct and necessary. The mistake is treating the savings account as the destination rather than a temporary stop. Money should move through a savings account on its way somewhere that actually builds wealth. For most people, it never does. The psychological trap is the feeling of safety. Money in a savings account feels protected. And that feeling of protection is so satisfying that it stops people from taking the next step, which is the step where the money actually starts working. Mistake 2. Saving without a specific purpose for each dollar. Not all savings are the same. But most people treat them as if they are. There is money you need available within 30 days. There is money you will need in 1 to 3 years. There is money you will not touch for 20 years. These 3 categories of money require completely different strategies, different accounts, and different financial instruments. Putting all of them in the same savings account is like using the same tool for three completely different jobs and wondering why none of them get done properly. Here is a real example of what this costs. Someone has $30,000 in a savings account. $8,000 of it is their emergency fund correctly placed. $7,000 of it is money they're saving for a house down payment in 2 years, also reasonably placed, perhaps better in a high-yield savings account. But $15,000 of it is money they have no specific plan for, money that should be invested for long-term growth. That $15,000, sitting in a 0.4% savings account for 10 years, grows to roughly $15,600. The same $15,000 invested in a diversified index fund at a historical average of 7% grows to approximately $29,500. The cost of not having a purpose for that money is nearly $14,000 from a single decision, made once, that never gets revisited. It gets worse. Without specific purposes assigned to your money, spending decisions become ambiguous. The boundary between savings and discretionary money blurs. A large savings balance starts to feel like permission to spend. And slowly, without any dramatic moment you can point to, the savings balance drifts downward and the cycle starts again. Mistake 3. Waiting until the end of the month to save what's left. This is the most common saving method in the world. It is also the one most reliably guaranteed to produce nothing. The logic seems reasonable. Earn money. Pay your obligations. Live your life. Save whatever remains. The problem is that the human brain does not produce remainders. Spending expands to fill available income with a consistency that behavioral economists have documented extensively. What remains at the end of the month, for the vast majority of people, is a number between very little and zero. Here is the alternative that actually works, and the math behind why. If you save $400 at the beginning of the month automatically, before you see it, before it mingles with your spending money, and invest it consistently for 25 years at a 7% average return, you accumulate approximately $324,000. If you attempt to save $400 at the end of the month and manage to do it only 60% of the time because life happens and the money was already mentally allocated, you save $240 per month on average and accumulate approximately $194,000. The gap is $130,000 produced not by discipline or deprivation, but purely by the timing of a single automated transfer. But here's what most people miss: paying yourself first is not a motivational concept. It is a behavioral systems design concept. It removes the decision from your conscious control, which removes it from the influence of every competing priority, impulse, and rationalization your brain will produce between the 1st and the 31st of every month. Automation is not laziness. It is the most sophisticated saving strategy available to an ordinary person. Mistake 4. Ignoring inflation as if it doesn't apply to saved money. Inflation is the silent charge applied to every dollar that isn't growing faster than it. Most people understand inflation conceptually. They know things cost more than they used to. They experience it at the grocery store and the gas station. But they apply that understanding only to their spending, not to their saving. They do not sit down and calculate what inflation is doing to the pile of money they've worked so hard to accumulate. The math is worth confronting directly. At 3% annual inflation, a conservative, historical average, the purchasing power of $50,000 in a standard savings account drops to the equivalent of approximately $37,000 in 10 years. You still have $50,000 plus a small amount of interest. But what that money can buy has shrunk by more than a quarter. You have been charged for the privilege of saving responsibly, and nobody sent you an inverse. I'm not done yet. This effect compounds in the same way that investment returns compound, but in reverse. The longer the money sits in a low-yield account, the more purchasing power it loses. A person who sits diligently in a savings account for 30 years and then retires doesn't have what they think they have. They have a number that looks like savings but represents significantly less real-world value than the effort that went into accumulating it. The only defense against inflation is a return that exceeds it. Savings accounts, in most interest rate environments, do not exceed inflation. Diversified investment accounts, historically, do. Mistake 5. Treating investing as too risky while ignoring the risk of not investing. This is the mistake that sounds like wisdom but functions like fear. The person who keeps their money in a savings account because the stock market is too risky has made a risk assessment. They have correctly identified that investment accounts can go down. What they have failed to do is identify the risk on the other side, the risk of not investing, the risk of accumulating money too slowly, the risk of arriving at retirement with a fraction of what they needed because they chose the instrument that felt safe over the instrument that historically builds wealth. Risk is not present in investing and absent in saving. Risk is present everywhere. The question is which risks you are choosing to accept. Here is the comparison in real numbers. Person A invests $500 per month in a diversified index fund for 30 years. The market drops significantly twice during that period in year 7 and in year 19. They do not sell. They keep contributing. At a historical average return of 7%, they end with approximately $567,000. Person B saves $500 per month in a savings account for 30 years at an average rate of 1% more generous than most people actually receive. They end with approximately $209,000. The stock market fell twice. Person A still ends with $358,000 more. But here's what most people miss: the emotional discomfort of watching an investment account drop in value is real and significant. It requires a specific kind of psychological resilience to stay invested during downturns. But that discomfort is temporary. The consequence of not investing arriving at the end of your working life with insufficient resources is permanent. You cannot choose between a comfortable path and a difficult one. You can only choose which difficulty you're willing to accept. Mistake 6. Saving the same amount forever regardless of income growth. This mistake is invisible because it looks like consistency. Consistency is good. This specific version of it is quietly harmful. You started saving $200 a month when you were 26 and earning $45,000 a year. That was the right amount for that moment: disciplined, proportionate, a genuine sacrifice. 10 years later you earn $72,000 a year. You are still saving $200 a month. Your savings rate has collapsed. You are saving less than half the percentage of your income that you were saving a decade ago, but because the dollar amount never changed, it doesn't feel like you went backward. It feels like stability. Here is what that costs. The difference between saving $200 a month and $500 a month for 20 years at 7% is approximately $166,000 versus $261,000, a gap of nearly $100,000 from a single adjustment that most people never make. Not because they can't afford to make it. Because they never examined whether the amount they set years ago still made sense for where they are now. The psychological insight here is called anchoring. The first number you associate with a behavior becomes the reference point against which you measure all future behavior. Your initial savings amount becomes the anchor. Every dollar above it feels optional. Every dollar below it feels like failure. The anchor itself, and whether it still makes sense, rarely gets questioned. Revisit your savings rate every time your income changes. Not the dollar amount. The percentage. That single habit, practiced consistently, is worth more than most financial strategies that require significantly more complexity. Mistake 7. Keeping all your savings in one place with no system. A savings account is a container. One container, for most people's financial lives, is not enough. High-performing personal financial systems, and I mean this in the most practical, non-glamorous sense, typically involve a small number of purposeful accounts, each assigned a specific role. A checking account for daily spending. A high-yield savings account for the emergency fund and short-term goals. A tax-advantaged retirement account, 401k, IRA, or equivalent, for long-term wealth building. Potentially a brokerage account for medium-term goals and additional investing. This is not complicated. It is not sophisticated investing. It is basic financial architecture. And most people don't have it, not because it's difficult to set up, but because nobody ever showed them that it was necessary. But here's what most people miss when everything is in one account. Every financial decision competes with every other financial decision in real time. The emergency fund competes with the vacation fund, competes with the retirement contribution, competes with the new laptop. With separate, labeled accounts, those decisions are already made. The money is already allocated. The question is never, can I afford this? It's simply, is this what this account is for? Clarity of purpose removes friction. Removed friction means the system runs. Systems that run build wealth. One undifferentiated savings account is not a system. It is a pile with a password. Go back to those two women having lunch twice a week. The one with $200,000 did not earn more. She did not sacrifice more. She did not spend her weekends studying financial markets or building spreadsheet models of her portfolio. What she did, 11 years ago, was set up 3 accounts. She automated a transfer into her high-yield emergency fund until it reached 3 months of expenses, then redirected that transfer into her retirement account and a small brokerage account. She assigned every dollar a purpose before the month started. She increased her contribution percentage every time she received a raise, not the dollar amount, the percentage. And she never confused the act of not spending with the act of building wealth. She didn't think about it much after that. The system ran. The money moved. The compounding worked in the background while she lived her life. The woman with $23,000 saved every month. She checked her balance regularly. She felt responsible and careful. She put money in a savings account and left it there because it felt safe and because nobody had ever clearly explained to her that safe and growing are not the same thing, that a savings account is a waiting room, not a destination. She wasn't trying to save. She was wrong about what saving was accomplishing. The gap between $200,000 and $23,000 is not 11 years of different choices. It is one foundational understanding, right utterly, that changed every subsequent decision quietly and without drama. Saving money is not enough. It never was. The question was always what happens to the money after you save it. If this reframed how you think about saving, share it with someone who's been disciplined with money but still feels like the numbers aren't moving. It might be the most useful thing they watch this year.